The Star Wars galaxy is a dangerous place, but not every death is just a casualty of war. Some characters meet an end so fittingly twisted that it feels like the Force itself had a sense of humor. From villains undone by their own schemes, to clone troopers who were given rather unfortunate names and met ironic ends, these are the strangest deaths in all of Star Wars. Darth Plegus. His name became legend, not because of his power, but because of the bitter tragedy of his death. Darth Plagueis' story is directly spelled out in Revenge of the Sith, when Palpatine tells Anakin Skywalker the infamous tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Darth Plagueis was obsessed with mastering the dark side's secrets, particularly the power to prevent death itself. His research into immortality made him one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history, supposedly able to manipulate the Force to create life and save others from dying. Yet for all his knowledge, Plagueis was blind to the greatest danger, the apprentice standing right beside him. Darth Sidious, his own student, turned on him just as the Sith Rule of Two demands, killing him in his drunken sleep when he was completely defenseless. The Sith Lord who sought to conquer death never even saw his own end coming. In the end, Plagueis mastered everything but his own survival.
Ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself.
Obi-Wan, Palpatine, and Anakin. In Revenge of the Sith, after Anakin Skywalker kills Count Dooku and rescues Chancellor Palpatine, he goes to help an unconscious Obi-Wan Kenobi, whom Palpatine tells him to leave behind.
Leave him or we'll never make it.
His fate will be the same as ours.
At the time, this line simply reflected Anakin's unwavering belief that they would all either escape together or perish together. But in a cruel twist of fate, this statement became eerily prophetic, because despite being spoken in an entirely different context, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine all eventually meet their end on one of the two Death Stars. Obi-Wan dies at the hands of Darth Vader aboard the first Death Star, sacrificing himself to ensure Luke Skywalker's escape. Anakin dies aboard the second Death Star, redeemed in his final moments as he destroys his Sith Master and saves his son. And Palpatine, he's thrown down the reactor shaft by Anakin, marking the Empire's downfall. The irony is undeniable. Anakin unknowingly foreshadowed the fates of all three men. Though spoken in a moment of confidence, his words became a dark prophecy, sealing their destinies aboard the Empire's ultimate weapons. Gandai. Dave Filoni and the team behind Star Wars The Clone Wars sure had fun with naming some of their original characters, such as the case with Jedi Master Gandai, which purposely sounds like I'm gonna die. Not exactly subtle. Gandai was a Nikto Jedi general who led Republic forces in a desperate battle to protect the Twi'lek people of Ryloth. Facing overwhelming separatist forces, he and his clone troopers stood their ground, buying time for Twi'lek refugees to escape. But despite his skill and determination, the odds were insurmountable. The Jedi perished in a last stand, gunned down by droid forces, just as his name had all but guaranteed. Clone troopers. For the clone troopers, choosing or earning a name was a way to forge an identity beyond a number. But for some, it was also a death sentence waiting to happen. Let's rapid fire a few. Charger, a 212th clone, died by electrocution. Red Eye, a member of the 501st Legion, was killed by a droid, with the last thing he sees being red eyes. Matchstick, a clone pilot, died when his ship caught fire and exploded thereafter. Every member of Domino Squad fell one by one. Cut Up got cut up when he was eaten by an eel. Droid Bait was literally used as droid bait when the Rishi base was attacked. Heavy died to an explosion after his heavy weapon ran out of ammo. Echo's presumed death left an echo in the form of the battle algorithm developed by the Techno Union. And finally, Fives was the fifth member to be declared dead. Commander Pons, though not an ironic name, had the phrase, "Some guys have all the luck," stenciled into the back of his helmet. Unfortunately, Pons' luck ran out when he was captured by Aura Singh and shot in the back of the neck. exactly where that phrase was written. Director Krennic. Obsessed with power and recognition from the Emperor, director Orson Krennic spent his entire career climbing the ranks of the Galactic Empire. As director of advanced weapons research, he was instrumental in overseeing the construction of the Death Star, believing it would secure his place at the Emperor's side. Yet, despite his ambition, he was constantly overshadowed, first by Tarkin, who seized control of the project, and later by Darth Vader, who made it abundantly clear that Krennic's ambitions were meaningless in the grand scheme of the Empire. But the cruelest irony of all came at the very end. After barely surviving a shootout with Cassian Andor and Jyn Erso, Krennic was left wounded on the Scarif Citadel Tower, watching helplessly as his life's work was charged up to be used against him. The Death Star, the weapon he spent years perfecting, fired on his location, permanently scarring Scarif and reducing Krennic to a mere statistic. He had believed the Death Star would cement his legacy, but in the end, it was nothing more than his executioner. In a similar manner to Krennic, we should also mention the likes of Cassian Andor and Ruscott Melshi, who unknowingly helped build the Death Star during their time at the Narkina 5 prison. Padme Amidala. One of the strongest-willed leaders in the galaxy, Padme Amidala was a queen and senator who dedicated her life to diplomacy, justice, and the preservation of democracy. She fearlessly stood against corruption, war, and tyranny, even as the Republic crumbled around her. Yet, despite her intelligence and political savvy, she failed to see just how deep the darkness ran within the man she loved. If only maybe, I don't know, she did something when he was bragging about killing not just the men, but the women and the children too. Her greatest tragedy wasn't just Anakin's fall. It was how she lost everything while still having so much to fight for. As Palpatine declared the birth of the Galactic Empire, she lost faith, remarking,
"So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause."
And when Anakin, now Darth Vader, choked her on Mustafar, it shattered any remaining hope she had left. Despite being physically healthy after giving birth to Luke and Leia, Padme simply let go, dying with her final words, "There is still good in him." The cruel irony, she was right, but she didn't live to see it. Her son Luke would be the one to redeem Anakin decades later, proving Padme's belief correct. But by then, it was far too late for her. Darth Maul. Raised from childhood in the ways of the dark side by Darth Sidious, Darth Maul spent his life as a tool of revenge, believing he was destined to rule at his master's side. But his life's purpose was stripped away before it even began. Maul was the first Sith revealed to the Jedi in over 1,000 years, but his grand introduction was immediately followed by his apparent death. Cut in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. Maul's hatred for Kenobi kept him alive. He survived on sheer will, clinging to his singular obsession, revenge. Yet, every attempt to reclaim power ended in failure. He built his own criminal empire, but it was crushed. He sought revenge on Kenobi, but was humiliated. He tried to manipulate Ezra Bridger into becoming his apprentice, but the boy rejected him. In the end, Maul spent decades clawing his way back to relevance, only to die in the same way he lived, chasing a purpose that was never his to claim. And the greatest irony, Maul thought he could kill Kenobi, but Obi-Wan barely saw him as a threat. Their final duel lasted mere seconds, with Kenobi striking him down in a single decisive move. All of Maul's pain, all of his rage, and he was never anything more than a discarded pawn. Ki-Adi-Mundi, representing pretty much everything wrong with the complacent Jedi at the time of its fall, Ki-Adi-Mundi completely failed to see the downfall of the Order, even when it was right in front of him. One of the biggest ironies of Mundi's life was his unwavering confidence in the Republic, while being one of the most vocal skeptics about the return of the Sith, dismissing Qui-Gon Jinn's warning about Darth Maul. Even as the Clone Wars escalated, he continued to place his faith in Palpatine and the Republic, failing to recognize the Sith Lord pulling the strings. And when the Jedi finally did act against Palpatine, Mundi was one of the first to pay the price. The Jedi Master who prided himself on logic and foresight never saw his own death coming, gunned down by his own men on Megiddo. Count Dooku, a master strategist and former Jedi who prided himself on his intellect, political foresight, and command over the dark side, Dooku was nothing more than a pawn in a game he believed he was playing. Dooku orchestrated the Clone Wars, positioning himself as the leader of the Separatists and a key figure in Darth Sidious's grand plan. But he was blind to one critical truth. He was never meant to survive. Palpatine had no intention of letting his apprentice rule alongside him. Dooku was merely a placeholder until a stronger Sith emerged. When he faced Anakin Skywalker aboard the Invisible Hand, he expected a duel, a defeat, and a capture, all of which Sidious had relayed to him off-screen. But when the Chancellor gave the order, kill him, Dooku realized the full depth of his betrayal. For the first time, the Count of Serena looked truly afraid. He had trained his replacement through lineage, in a way, unknowingly grooming the very man who would execute him. And in the end, Dooku, who had always considered himself above mere pawns, was checkmated, beheaded by the future Darth Vader in a matter of seconds. Django Fett. The deadliest bounty hunter of his time, Django Fett was a warrior who had gone toe-to-toe with several Jedi and lived to tell the tale. He wasn't just some mercenary, he was the perfect template for the entire Grand Army of the Republic. Skilled, ruthless, and armed to the teeth, he was known for eliminating Jedi, even once with nothing but his fists and raw combat ability. Yet, when the Battle of Geonosis erupted, Django faced Jedi Master Mace Windu in what should have been a showcase of his legendary prowess. Instead, it ended in seconds. A failed attempt to kill Windu from a distance left him disarmed, and when his jetpack malfunctioned, he was left vulnerable. Windu wasted no time, rushing in and decapitating Django with a single stroke of his amethyst lightsaber. A man who had spent his career proving he was more than a match for Jedi was killed by one without landing a single hit. His legacy would live on through the Clone Troopers and Boba Fett, but for the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy, his end came swiftly, almost effortlessly, at the hands of the very warriors he built his reputation hunting. But those are our picks for the most ironic deaths in all of Star Wars. Did we miss any out? Leave your thoughts in the comments.